On this episode of the Info Insecurity Podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Tobin Shea, the CEO of MindWise Cybersecurity and Fraud Prevention. He oversees all activities, employees, product development, and fundraising for MindWise as Chief Executive Officer. Prior to co-founding MindWise, he was a researcher within St. Mary's College of California's chemistry department and presented his research on synthesis and testing of photoresponsive liquid crystal elastomers at the American Chemical Society conference. He also holds bachelor's degree from St. Mary's College with a double major in biology and philosophy, double minors in chemistry and music. Outside of academics, Tobin has developed several patent pending devices ranging from ventilators in response to the pandemic to firearm safety devices. Stay tuned for this special episode of Info Insecurity Podcast that's also available on YouTube. If you're just listening to this, check in the description of the podcast for the video of this entire interview. So I guess my first, I just have a few questions here, but my first real question was looking back on your background and like the audience heard the intro already. Can you maybe explain how in the world you got into cybersecurity from the background that you have?
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, my background really didn't include anything explicitly cybersecurity related or even computer science related. I credit where credit's due. Our co-founder, and he's our CTO at MindWise, Nico. He is, he's really the computer genius there, and I'll give him credit that the foundation that became what MindWise is today was really his idea. Nico and I have been close our whole lives. We really grew up together, and even though I didn't choose to study computers specifically or computer science, it's always been something that's interested me, and that I've been involved with just my whole life, and more so, even though my background is more in science, there's so much kind of interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary things that help each other. The statistics we learn when studying science are also very important for helping, analyze trends in cybersecurity. So, I really think everything's very interconnected, but, the idea itself came from our co-founder, and eventually grew into MindWise.
Okay. This is a big one because a lot of my audience and the people that my YouTube and podcasts are people that are either just entering or just about to enter. I teach cybersecurity for a living. So the biggest thing is, from your perspective as a CEO of a cybersecurity company, what would you say somebody coming in, especially at an entry level, a candidate coming in that's like your dream candidate, that would, like, you would sleep better at night knowing that these people are becoming a part of your team? Or is entry level not really, does entry level not really exist anymore? Because I see like more and more, there's such a high demand for skilled cybersecurity people, but yet there's hundreds and hundreds of people graduating and getting certifications and that have no chance of getting any jobs. So can you kind of go over what is it that, as a CEO, you really want?
Yeah, so job hunting and tech in general, and cybersecurity too, is really, it's really tough, and it's really different than kind of the normal application process for just someone in business or someone in healthcare or whatever. And I think something that happened is, because tech is, it's the thing to do now. Comp sci is the thing to study, and
Right.
It went from like a scarcity of programmers, like we needed more programmers than there were, to all of a sudden everyone decided to study comp sci, and all these education websites started coming with, and now there's like more programmers than there are jobs. So like a couple months ago, we had posted a job. It was pretty niche. I didn't expect a lot of applicants, and we got hundreds in a matter of a week. And I was swamped going through these applications. And because technology and cybersecurity is a relatively new thing, especially in education, I personally, and I think this trend holds true for a lot of companies, uh, the name of your university means a lot less. A Harvard's degree in science, that means a lot.
Right.
Harvard degree in law, that means a lot. I don't really care where you went to college or if you went to college for tech. And in some ways, that's great. That lowers the barrier to entry. Um, in other ways, it also means the pool is going to be a lot bigger too. So there's more people to compete with, and it's less obvious to sort them out. What I really, really look for is, and I hate to say it, previous experience is huge. If I see that this person
Right.
has worked on a similar project, um, that's going to give them a huge advantage. That being said, the context of the project doesn't really matter to me. I don't care if you did it, uh, in a as a previous job in a previous company, or if it was like a passion project that you did on your own, and that happens to be relevant to what we're looking for. So, I really
Yeah.
encourage people to don't just get your certification because there's a lot of people with certifications these days. Do something with it. Whether that means freelancing here or there just to get experience, getting a job that might not be exactly what you want to do, but just helps get you
Right.
experience, or just pursue a passion project. Just show me that you can do something, past, just acing the certificate tests.
Right.
That's really big. And then we're also we're looking for teamwork. Um, you know, Nobody's programming in a silo, and that's kind of the downside of these certificate programs, is that a lot of times you are programming in a silo, um, which is not how it will actually go when you're working in a business. So being able to demonstrate teamwork is huge. Asking questions is huge, and being comfortable doing so. I would rather have someone tell me, I don't know what this is, so we can quickly bring them up to speed, than pretending they know what it is and missing deadlines. And that's all part of being a team member, right? Just communicating your strengths and weaknesses, what you can and can't do. That's all really big too.
Yeah, the reason why I asked is because it kind of leads into my next question, which was, I guess, getting more specific on that. Cybersecurity specifically has, I think, a problem. But this is, again, why I wanted you on. This is coming from your perspective of someone hiring people and wanting people, is that there's a certification culture in cybersecurity, but at the end of the day, I would almost argue that the majority of them don't matter. So it's like you have to have them, um, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have the skills to do the job. But you can't go without them. They cost a lot of money. So there's just, do you see that changing,
That's so
or at
funny.
least it's a huge problem.
I completely agree with your analysis right there. It's like having the certifications, they won't really help you, but not having them will really hurt you. So it's like a only a lose lose basically. You're going to spend all this money, it's not going to help you, but not doing it could really hurt you. um, I personally try to stay away. I mean, it is nice to see someone with a certification. It tells me that okay, they at least know these things. um,
Right.
but I try to not make assumptions. I try not to assume that just because they don't have it doesn't mean they don't know. For instance, our CTO and co-founder, he has some of these certifications, but he by no means has all the certifications under the sun. But believe me, he's knowledgeable to all that stuff. He just hasn't,
Right.
needed to go get them. So I try to be very aware that just because you don't have it doesn't mean you don't know it. Um, but it is nice to see. I hope, I hope that companies move towards that model of being a little more flexible. Um, but like I said, I mean, we're a relatively small company, and even our kind of niche job post got hundreds of applicants, which I wasn't expecting. So I can only imagine the how overwhelmed the bigger top tier companies are, Accenture and stuff. They're probably getting thousands of applications a
Yeah.
day, and at some point, you do have to apply some sorting criteria. Otherwise, you'll just be drowned in applications. forever. So one thing companies can do to kind of get around depending so heavily on the certifications is issue kind of test interviews. Because if you ace your interview, that's going to mean a lot, whether you have the certification or not. Someone with the certification that does horrible on a test interview is going to be a lot less impressive than someone with no certifications but does well in that interview.
Yeah, I have to agree, especially in this field, because you know, I don't think it's unacceptable or offensive to say that this field is full of a lot of folks with really good skills and a lot of good knowledge, but not great communication at the higher levels of intelligence and the higher aptitudes. So like an interview is almost impossible for some people. I mean, last week I went to a cybersecurity conference here, and there was a lot of people there was a wide variety, but I was surprised at the number of people that you could tell, like, I don't know how these people like communicate, on a regular basis. So I think there should be more of a test interview type of thing. Some companies have done it. I've applied for a few jobs where they like ask questions and you do an audio recording.
Sure.
I don't know how many of that gets listened to, because like you said, you get bombarded with hundreds. And it's a problem so big. So I can't say much because I have an NDA, but there's a project I'm involved with now, actually, that it's a bunch of machine learning and artificial intelligence programmers that are trying to solve the problem of not only is the tech world crappy to get into, but the recruiters are bombarded. There's a whole subreddit where it's like, getting 16,000, 20,000 applicants for stuff. So they're basically making it, it's going to be basically a Tinder for job hunting, right? So you're going to put in your info once, and then you'll get notified when you get matched with a job, and you just say yes or no. There is no applying. They don't see your name. They don't see the name of your school. They don't see your gender. They don't see any of that stuff. So hopefully that gets kind of, again, I'm nothing specific yet, and it's not completely done yet, but hopefully things like that will start coming. I think ZipRecruiter has tried to make themselves like that, but heard mixed reviews about that. So
yeah, it's a tough issue.
yeah.
And real quick to touch on something you brought up, a lot of times, I mean, you're right that the tech industry is filled with a really wide variety of personalities and intelligence and skills level. We've had opportunities to work with people that are highly intelligent, highly skilled, but kind of like you said, you're like, how do you even communicate with these people? They almost can't do it. And it's kind of funny. Our CTO, he kind of prefers those individuals, and he probably shares a lot of some of those traits. Our CTO is just brilliant beyond belief, but I don't favor those individuals. I respect
Right.
their abilities, but in the context of a business, there's things like deadlines, teamworks. I need reports to know what's going on. And, I know you might be better than this guy, but hey, this guy at least tells me what's going on. Hey, here's the timeline. Here's a setback. I need these resources. Well, you're over here in, Mars doing amazing things, but
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't even know about them because you don't tell me. So, I really encourage people to practice those interpersonal skills, because I don't know how the CTO will react to that, but I promise you management will love that, those interpersonal skills. And I promise you management generally prefers that over just the high skilled, but kind of lone wolf type workers.
Right. I guess getting into the weeds of security itself, the first real question was, I guess it's kind of a two-parter, but not really, which not only so average people, not tech people, right? How are they supposed to protect themselves in this new kind of emerging place? And more importantly, though, is how are average people supposed to get into contact or come into contact with the information that they need? because you can't even give away good security information for free to companies that need the information. So how is, the average Joe supposed to even get at that information, let alone like what are they supposed to do if they're not technically inclined to protect themselves?
Sure. So I get asked this by family and friends all the time.
Right.
Hey, Tobin, what should I be doing to, protect myself or my family? And I hate to say it, but the average person, and even the not average person, just because of, how the world is set up, is kind of at the whim of, the powers that be, big companies, Google, banks, credit, card issuers. We really just have to lay back and trust that they're going to take care of us. I mean, that's not totally true. You could go to the extreme and say, I'm never going to have a credit or debit card because that poses a security risk. You could do that, but I mean, that's such a drastic move.
Yeah.
I have plenty of credit and debit cards, and I'm willing to accept that there's a level of risk, and I'm depending on my bank to do the right thing. And so a lot of it really is depending on the powers that be to protect you. And this is very important, and putting pressure on your bank and these people to do that, because if they don't feel the pressure to do it, they won't do it, like any business. But if they feel that pressure, they will do it. So that's important. That being said, you're not totally powerless. There's just always going to be some avenues that you have to depend on. There's the obvious stuff. Be really tight with your info. Never email, banking information, login information. That should be obvious, but it's not for a lot of people. I see people do that all the time. Family members, hey, can I email you that? No, don't email me that. If you have to exchange banking information or sensitive login, do it over the phone, and not text. I mean, like a call. So there's no written record of that, no key loggers, to worry about. I think if I had to recommend one thing that everybody needs to be aware of is phishing. I think it's some like 60% of scams or fraud, data breach related things involve phishing at some point in that plot. That's huge, and people don't know to be on the lookout for that. And sometimes people assume, oh, phishing is only like Nigerian print style emails. It'll be really obvious. I get it, and it's not. Especially now with like deep fake technology, it's terrifying. You can get a phone call from someone that sounds like your mom, your sibling, or something, and it's not. So if something doesn't seem right, pause. Take that extra second to check out the email, to check out the text, the call. If anything feels off, slow down. Whatever they need can wait 5-10 minutes for you to see, hey, does this make sense? And if it doesn't, don't share whatever information they're asking for.
Yeah, I think not just for regular everyday people, but for companies underestimate. There's a couple startups I've involved with, and they're like, oh, we need to, all these tools and all of these things to monitor everything in the cloud. I'm like, no. Everything is going to happen like over email, or believe it or not, like picking up the phone. Somebody's going to pick up the phone and be like, hey, I'm so and so with your phone company. I just need to confirm your credit card number. That sounds so stupid, but somebody even tried that with me. And it's just, the phishing is really, I think, really underestimated. And I think it's convenient that it kind of applies to everyday folks, but at the same time you have companies. And then they're very convincing. People should know. I think the most creative thing I've heard, and now this was at work, but still, if you're out in public or something and you get an email that pops up on your phone, right? And there's people everywhere around you, and it says, oh, thanks so much for, I don't know, some kind of premium membership to Pornhub.com. It was literally one where it looked like it was from a pornographic website, and it had an unsubscribe at the bottom. And that was the link that got him. And it's just like stuff like that. People don't realize it's very creative. If I can find out, I don't know, I would discourage, I think public schools now have like portals, especially with COVID-19. Oh, there's portals now. You can go in and look at that. But that means that, if I know your kids go to school somewhere, I'm going to be able to, say that I'm from your school. And like when you start talking about people's kids and people's life, yeah, people get really creative. So,
So I I knew someone that this happened to years back, and this was years ago. So the sophistication at this time really surprised me. Um, but it was a college student, and the scammers figured out his schedule, and they waited till they knew he was in a lecture to call the grandparents and say, I'm your son's attorney. He's been arrested. He's going to stay in jail unless you post bail, which has been set at $10,000. If email it to, or send it, wire it to this account. It's the county courthouse bail bank account. And grandparents, not being totally naive, they called to check, and they called their grandson a few times, but he didn't answer because he was in lecture, which the scammers knew. And so they wired the money, and then hour and a half later, the grandson calls back. Hi, Grandma, I missed your call. Oh, are you out of jail? What are you talking about? Money was gone.
that's crazy.
Never underestimate the sophistication and the lengths that these scammers will go to attack individuals or employees at a company. It's really scary. It's really scary.
And that goes to show too, a lot of people will say, oh, well, I don't have good credit, or I don't have a lot of money, so I'm not going to be a target, or I'm a small business. But it's like, not only even financially, and I know you probably know a lot more about this because you're in fraud protection, but it's not just about that. It's about, if I get your information and I'm able to make a driver's license or something with your name and go commit a crime, they're going to come after you for that. Right. It happened to somebody that I knew. I was involved in like a small business around here, and they were telling these horror stories about that had happened to somebody there. There was a warrant out for their arrest. The police went to arrest them, actually arrested them, and then looked at and realized that it's somebody that has stolen their identity, not to take any money from them at all. It was just so they can go on a crime spree and no one would ever be able to catch them. It's like, you're not
Exactly.
too small to be a target.
Exactly. And this was kind of scary. I was at a conference not too long ago, and spoke with some ATF officers, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. And right now nothing's happened officially, but we've been exploring, potentially working together on the use of stolen or synthetic identities to purchase firearms.
Wow.
How terrifying is that? They say, Mr. Ramsey, we found a gun registered to you at a crime scene, and you go, what are you talking about? I don't own a gun. And they say, well, our records say you do. So I mean, yeah, identity theft is really serious. The most obvious concern is financial losses. Someone takes out a loan in your name, buys a house in your name, defaults. That's the most obvious thing people worry about, and statistically that's probably what's going to happen. But identity theft can expand far past just financial things.
Right. Do you see, or have you heard of any trends that would, I mean, the advice that we've talked about so far, do you see anything new happening or on the horizon that would change any of that advice to be anything different? Is there anything
No,
crazy happening that going to
yeah.
require
So
some new thing?
something kind of a phrase I've coined in my own head is, you can't change human nature with the software update. And that's why phishing is always going to be something to worry about. And I really think a lot of cybersecurity companies and businesses that are concerned with data protection, I think they overinvest in the technology side. You know, they want all this monitoring software. Oh, the SEIM SIEM is like kind of the new gold standard. Or you better have your SIEM software in place, and that's all good. But human nature is always going to be the weak link there. So
Right.
for the foreseeable future, I don't see phishing as, no longer being concerned. And a lot of companies made the mistake, and it really, makes me grind my teeth. They thought biometrics and two-factor authentication, they're like, oh my God, that's going to end the, credential stealing crisis.
Right.
We won't have to worry about phishing once things are biometric or 2FA. Um, it's just so wrong. It's just patently wrong. I hope it will improve things, and I think it will, but it is not the answer to credentialing issues. For one, those are both software dependent, even though they appear to not be. Like biometric appears to not be software, but it's still software dependent.
Right.
And like I'm blanking on exactly which business it was that had this problem, but there was some workaround where hackers found a way to basically trick the fingerprint reader, the iris scanner, into thinking it had read a correct biometric
Oh,
signature.
okay.
um, Biometrics, it's still software, thus it can be hacked. 2FA has been hacked pretty easily, lots of times. They're just not the answer. And furthermore, and I actually did this. This was a really neat project that I want to, MindWise, we want to have this repeated to build some statistical certainty around it, so we can actually kind of publish this as some findings. But it was 3D printing with 3D printing with stereolithography. That's the like super high definition laser 3D printing. You can print the definition of a fingerprint. So you can take a photo of a fingerprint, uh, transform it using some pretty basic software into a 3D model, and then you can print that on a flexible, you call it resin, with these liquid 3D printers, coat it with some silicone, so now it's conductive. And I practiced it with my phone, and I could stick my fake silicone on my phone, and it would unlock. Um, Similarly, research firms have found a high enough definition photo of an eye will pass most iris scans.
Oh my.
Biometrics it's a step in the right direction. It's not the answer.
Yeah,
Human
especially when they say, it's the password you can't change. So if somebody steals it, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. And similarly, we've seen this is crazy. We've seen biometric data for sale on the dark web. So you can buy basically when the scanner encodes a fingerprint, you can buy that digital
Oh my gosh.
encoding of someone's fingerprint, which is I think it's terrifying.
That's okay. Yeah. That's something I wouldn't have thought of being able to just sell like that. I guess that brings me to, let's talk about, I don't know if we should go to dark web first, but I'm going to go there in that general area. So everybody keeps talking about the new internet coming out, Web 3, right? Decentralized, which we already have decentralized web for the most part, dark web. Obviously the exit nodes are monitored and all that good stuff by the NSA and and hackers alike, right? But um there seems to be a first, I don't know if people are really starting to care about privacy finally, or what it is, and maybe you have more insight to that. But as much as there's illegal activities and our information that's stolen from hacktivities, right, being sold on the dark web, wouldn't you say that kind of internet could lead to a solution for a lot of security problems, being decentralized, the main word being decentralization, and everything being kind of authenticated? um, wouldn't that lead to, is there any problems that would necessarily solve? Because it seems to be the golden ticket, especially. I know it's different from Web3, but it's the biggest thing. It's the closest thing we have to Web3 right now, which we're moving toward. What are your thoughts on that?
And I'm sorry, I had my audio cut out, just Zoom problems. I think I missed a snippet. What did you say was the closest thing to Web3 at this point?
So I would say that the dark web is the closest thing to Web3 because we have just the way everything seems to be decentralized and more aimed towards privacy. But with all that privacy, I know there are illegal activities taking place, but isn't that better for security concerns as a whole for everyday people? Or is it not that way?
Yeah, so you're always going to balance two things. We see this with the internet. We see this with government politics. You're always going to be balancing security versus freedom and privacy. Unfortunately, if you want freedom and privacy, well, that means a potential criminal will also have that freedom and privacy and likely leverage that to their advantage. Alternatively, if you give that up, well, now you've given it up. You might be a little more secure, but you have to. Yeah, that's almost a philosophical question at that point. Which one is better? And people fall very passionately on both sides. I tend to land on the side of the favoring freedom and privacy, especially as kind of this awareness for big data has grown. To put it in one word, it's really creepy. I think.
Right.
And people are being so commoditized. It's uncomfortable. It's strange, and some people might not be okay with it. And at least with the internet right now, it's hard, but you can achieve relative privacy, and I think that's good. And yes, it does allow for some criminals to exploit that. But total privacy, is also not achievable on the web right now. And I think if any organization has enough time and resources, they can find out just about who did anything. To be honest, I'm not a big proponent of Web3. I think it's kind of a lot of buzz for it's making a lot of noise. I don't really get the big deal. I know people like Musk, I think Dorsey too, they share that sentiment, right? I guess I share the sentiment with them. I think the web as it is now is okay, and sure, it allows for some exploitation. It also allows for people to achieve some privacy if they choose to. And yeah, even on the dark web, like you said, the end nodes are being monitored. So even in the dark web, that is, with like Tor, where you're getting bounced around, it's much more anonymous than the normal web. It's still not totally anonymous. You are connecting from one place to another, so that string does exist.
I guess my main thing is, as far as if we transition to more decentralized things, if Web3 is inevitable, I mean, and I think as security folks, we have to kind of think in the back of our head all the time, like, what if it is inevitable? If we're not ready for that, which I don't think cybersecurity is at all ready for that. I mean, because if you even think, most people don't even get a decentralized application, like what that actually means. The fact that you would have no ability to go in, like if Twitter was decentralized, there would be no taking posts off. That just would be impossible to do. There is no that means the same thing for malware, right? If malware is on one server, it's on everybody's server. Ransomware, who knows what ransomware could do on a system that makes copies of everything and puts it on everybody's system. I don't even know how that hasn't happened with the dark web, but maybe it's different functionality. But my argument as far as the attacker side is, they're already using those anonymizing services, right? But I just wonder, is it even in the dialogue at the top levels? in companies like yours, well, if people start migrating over to this, what are we going to do about it? There are no technologies at all on, well, I would say on either side, but we already do have decentralized application. We have, of course, you know, people that have billions of dollars are investing in these new Web3 companies. And so they do exist, and the more people that get fed up with big data, which I'm surprised hasn't happened yet, because a lot of people hate it, but nobody's going to do anything about it. So at some point, everybody's going to migrate to something else. And I'm just wondering, is that even in the conversation yet? Because I just don't think we're anywhere near ready to secure
Sure.
systems.
I would agree. As much as I hate to admit this, as the number one spokesman for my company, I feel like I should be saying we're ready for anything. But the reality is, if I woke up tomorrow and all the internet had moved to Web3, which is not going to happen, but let's say it did, um, I don't totally know how we'd handle that.
Right.
Just being honest. And I
Right.
really haven't spent the time or the resources to fully understand the implications. And I imagine most small to medium-sized cybersecurity companies haven't either.
Right.
I think, like me, they have a general understanding of it, and they think, this is at least 10 years in the future. If it
Right.
becomes, if at all, which I'm not convinced it will happen. That's just my personal stance. But if at all, it's not going to happen tomorrow. So we'll worry about it when we get there. I'm sure the bigger companies, Accenture, Symantec, and I'm sure they have a whole department, dedicated to studying the implications of, Web3 and how they could roll out their products on there. But I feel like most, small to medium-sized cybersecurity companies are not dedicating significant resources to, researching this yet.
Right. So hopefully somebody's doing it. I would think, and I don't know what the latest timeline is, but I think the bigger scare, and I guess I could ask you about that if you have time. Quantum computing seems to be the bigger scare coming up. And if I was smart enough, I would get my PhD in cybersecurity. My thesis would be on quantum computing and cybersecurity, but I'm just not that smart. But anyway, I think that I don't know if they've moved up that timeline. The last I heard, it was pretty far out, but not too far out. So what
Do you mean for like consumerly accessible quantum computing?
Accessible to break encryption?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you said it right there. That the crazy thing with quantum computing is how it's going to implicate cryptography. I think initially these quantum computing, they're going to be it's not going to be something you buy at Best Buy. It's going to be kind of like a cloud resource that you contract out compute time to Amazon's warehouse of quantum computers, and it's almost comical how much criminal activity they're using commercial servers to conduct criminal activity. That being said, and Amazon, DigitalOcean's defense, they try to, and I think they do a pretty good job at keeping that under control, but it happens. And I imagine the same thing would happen. Some cyber group would submit for compute time on a quantum engine like that, and I think there will be, and this is super speculative, I think there'll be a brief period of intense vulnerability. And I think really quickly the good guys, for lack of better words, will catch up, because that's what we do, right? Technology advanced, everything, everyone lags for a second. There's always someone on, the bleeding edge of technology, and everyone lags for a sec, and then they catch up. I'm sure there will be some period where, there's probably will be some vulnerabilities connected with it, but I'm equally sure, cryptographic methods that are virtually impervious to quantum computing will be developed. And there are already some of those, and I don't remember the specific ones, but there already exists cryptographic techniques that are in wide practice today, that are not at risk for being cracked by quantum computing.
That's good to know, because I think there's a lot of scare going on, and I think in security in general, there's always this paranoia mentality in articles and on Reddit and so on. Um, but yeah, I don't think I've ever read that or heard that before. Um, because that's not what sells, and that's not what everybody talks about. It's like, oh, as
Of
soon as
course.
quantum computing is out, and then, everybody has their own opinion on this, what I would say is a crypto bubble with the whole crypto thing. I mean, imagine the computing resources of a quantum computer. Um, when you can mine a million Bitcoin a minute or something, probably, who knows? It's just, there's all kinds of implications behind it. I was just wondering if,
Sure. And I don't mean to, downplay the implications of widespread access to quantum computing. I think at least most of the reading I've done suggests that it poses a serious problem.
right,
I just want to throw in that I have also done plenty of reading that suggests, like, no, the world's not going to end when quantum computing comes out.
exactly.
Um, Not that it's not a big thing, but yeah, I don't think it's the end of the world either. I've also read interesting stuff about, what you just said, how quantum would affect blockchains. I
Yeah,
really haven't gone down the blockchain rabbit hole.
no,
So
no,
I'm stepping out of, the field of things I'm really qualified to talk about at all. But
right.
I have at least read stuff that
Well, that's a
it
whole
could have a large
culture.
impact.
That
Yeah.
whole blockchain. You have to like
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Exactly.
that's a whole different group of people. Um, so your company, what are some of the biggest things that you do? Some of the biggest challenges? What are some of your biggest wins that you would be able to talk about?
Sure. So most of our technology or most of our, products and solutions really, rotate around kind of our, our core technology, which is our ability to surveil the dark web, um, which is a really big place. And the, criminal component of the dark web is massive. I was just reading kind of the most updated figures. I think they were from 2021 estimates, um, and it was that the dark web economy equates to about $16 trillion annually, which is about roughly a fifth or 20% of the normal world economy annually. So it's huge. Um, I would be lying if I said we monitored every single bit of the dark web, and if anyone ever says they're doing that, they're lying. They're just lying. But there are certainly, with an economy of that scale, what that means is that it's somewhat similar to our, kind of the ClearNet economy. There are shops and there are businesses and there are people that specialize in things, and they will consult other criminals and help them, with this project they're working on. Freelancing hackers, rent a botnet. All these things exist in a really similar way to the normal economy. And that means there has to be stable marketplaces and internet locations for transactions and exchanges, and we're able to watch the what we think are the kind of the most important places, and gather lots of intelligence from there. Our premier product is credit and debit card fraud security. So there exist marketplaces where millions of credit and debit card frauds are listed for sale. And of course, they only list partial information, because they listed the whole thing. You wouldn't need to buy it. And we're able to enrich data and notify banks and credit unions that, hey, we think, customer X, their card is for sale right now. You better cancel that or mitigate it however you choose, before the fraud is attempted. And like I said, similarly, we can leverage that technology for other things, account takeover security. Basically, if it's worth selling on the dark web, we can monitor it.
I didn't even know that was possible. Yeah, that's something that sounds impossible. I mean, I know there are companies out there. I know Legal Shield is one where they say they have something that scans billions of websites, which I didn't even know there was billions. So that it scans the dark web every day for your information and lets you know.
Sure. And I
So that's
will,
crazy.
I will warn against, well, I suppose I can name this company because this is true. It's not slanderous at all. We actually ran this test. At some point in time, my personal, that's the other thing, we have to be very careful ethically, what we're doing. I mean, we're working with real people's information. So
Right.
typically it would not be ethical to experiment in any way with other people's information. But we came across a stroke of luck, and that was my information was compromised somehow. Don't know how, but it was. And I said, great, we can experiment on that all we want. I full permission. Let's see what happens. And we signed up for a ton of other companies, like Norton. They have a dark web security. Well, if your info is for sale, we'll find it. And they ran the scan and said, your information, to our knowledge, your information is not for sale on the dark web. I said, well, it is. So you're wrong. Similarly, a lot of other companies did not find that my information was for sale, and I was staring at it right there. It was for sale. So I think a lot of companies use it as kind of a gimmick. Oh, we'll protect you from the dark web, but not everyone that says that is doing it, totally legitimately. And there exist marketplaces of varying levels of security. Some of them you can just, if you know the address, you can just show up, see what's there. Others are much more secure. They're invite only, monitoring against web scraping technology, kicking off users, that are exhibiting suspicious, activity. Those are the places that it appears like Norton and other companies like that, they're not there. And that's where we are.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess that's really reassuring because I mean, it's either it seems like kind of the last place where adversaries can go to exchange that. I'm not sure. I mean, there's nothing that we don't know about, right? I mean, it's the dark web. That's it. There's nothing that you know of on the horizon again that that they might be trying to transition to get away from things like that, or do you think anybody's
I see
aware?
um you know I not that I know of, and not where any significant data exchange is occurring. Sure, maybe two closely connected cybercrime groups or individual hackers. Sure, they might use some offline method or some alternative encrypted radio communication, if they're in the same city. But that's not a significant source of data exchange. Like I said, the economy is 16 trillion. So to facilitate that economy, there needs to be stable marketplaces. That's where the most this stuff is happening. So I'm sure there's some niche, small person to person communications that are like outside the grasp of being monitored, and like non-internet based satellite communication that governments use. It exists, but it's just not it's not a significant portion of what's going on.
That's just really reassuring because a lot of, you always hear everybody talks about how, oh, your information will get taken and sold on the dark web, but nobody's really doing anything about it, right? We know what's happening there, but it's kind of like, well, once it's there, it's too late. So yeah, just to know that there are eyes on that, it's kind of incredible.
So that's exactly what I thought, and that's a huge reason why we chose to pursue MindWise. I mean, we've known about the dark web. That's not MindWise didn't discover the dark web. Everyone knew about it, and we were shocked to see. We kind of thought, oh, someone's probably doing this already, and we're shocked to see that nobody really was the way we were. And you know, security, and I think this is a huge mistake about the mentality of cybersecurity right now. Is everything is, defensive, compliance this, and oh, meet all these industry standards, and that's great. You
Right.
should be doing that, but then they think, okay, I'm now PCI compliant. I can relax, and we're impervious to attack, and I can go to sleep. That's just wrong. That is so wrong. And um, places have been getting better at incident responses and stuff, and sealing up data breaches faster. But once the data is out there, they just wait for a big company like Visa or Experian to put together a report that basically says last month, all these cards we think were probably compromised. You should cancel them. It's just so
Jeez.
passive. It blows my mind that not many people are pursuing a more active, role in this kind of post-breach security measures.
Do you think that and I know there's not probably not much time left, but you mentioned something that kind of got me thinking, the PCI compliance thing. Would you say that if you are a company that you can say for sure you're PCI compliant, if you then have a breach on your system, do you think that that compliance gets in the way of progress? Because then at least they can say, well, look, we were PCI compliant, so yeah, we're responsible, but it wasn't our fault because we did everything we were supposed to do. Whereas they're not really doing everything they can do, right? I mean, 'cause that kind of
Exactly.
seems like a liability, like it's not our liability anymore.
You nailed it. And I get it being, like I said, I focus much more on the business end of MindWise than I do the actual technical stuff. So I get it. At some point, you have a limited amount of resource as a company. And once you've crossed that threshold of no longer being liable, you say, okay, move on. We got to focus on
Yeah.
other things. I get it. But I think it has negative effects on the mentality of cybersecurity, and that is, people go to sleep once they hit compliance, they go to sleep. Uh, when for not that much more resources, they could, implement more active monitoring and really do all that they can do as opposed to just covering themselves from liability. So I get it, but yeah, I would agree with you. I think it gives people an excuse to kind of stop trying.
Um, I guess kind of my last big question, it's just a personal one.
Sure.
A personal one that a personal curiosity, because we've been talking and we've thrown around, debit and credit card. Um, have you ever seen that movie, Catch Me If You Can?
Yeah, that's Leonardo DiCaprio and
Yeah,
Tom Hanks. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the guy that movie was based off of, Frank William Abagnale Jr., he like does talks and everything. And every single talk that I've seen him do, he basically, his number one advice is use credit cards. Don't use debit cards, and you're stupid if you use a check. And because even if your credit card gets breached, it's not really your problem. It's not your problem. They're required to reimburse you, and you're not liable for anything. Would you agree with that as somebody involved in fraud prevention? I mean, should people have more of a peace of mind if they just use a credit card for 100% of their transactions?
Sure. So like I said at the very beginning, the really safest thing to do is have no credit or debit cards and only use cash, but that's unrealistic. Um, you need a card. Um,
Yeah.
so not that credit cards are, the victims of fraud less often, but for reasons that frankly I don't know, that in the legal and insurance underpinnings of banking, for some reason credit cards uh, offer you a lot more like liability protection than debit cards. Debit cards, it's a very small minimum they cover. I think it's like past, if you don't report it within a very short period of time, and if it's over this amount of money, you're not covered. Credit cards, and I've had this happen. I reported something that happened over a month ago, and it was a lot of money. Someone bought a brand new computer on Amazon for a few $1,000s. I said, that wasn't me. And they said, okay, no questions asked. They just
Yeah.
took it off my statement. So for that reason, I don't think credit cards are safer. In fact, they're probably more dangerous in terms of what gets compromised. But in terms of like you as the customer, you will probably face less out-of-pocket losses by using a credit card as opposed to a debit card.
Yeah, I was just curious because that's basically his thing. Is like it's not safer, but like for you,
Yeah,
like if somebody, like what are they gonna do? Like that has to be replaced. The credit card company is required to take care of that problem for you. So that's
exactly.
just something. I'm just a fan of his, so I just kind of figured your
Of course, yeah.
insider opinion. Was there anything last minute you'd like to say or plug or talk about before I let you go?
I think that's about it. My really thesis that I hammer home anytime anyone will listen is watch out for phishing. Don't underestimate the sophistication they'll go to. If it feels off, slow down, check it out. That's for individuals. I think that's one of the most important things you can do.
Awesome.
And be diligent. It's boring. Take
Mhm.
5 minutes to look at your credit card bill and your credit score. If you went from a 700 to a 500 in a month, look into that.
Right.
Takes 5 minutes every month. Just do it. It's boring, but it's worth doing.
Cool. Well, look, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your probably very busy schedule, and it's literally midnight right now to talk to me and my audience and everything. So I really do appreciate that. And yeah, hope you have a good night and good weekend. If you have weekends as a CEO, I don't know, probably not.
No weekends, but thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope at least one person, learned how to be a little bit safer.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great
All
day.
right. You too.
Yeah.